Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a seriously epic industrial transformation story. We're going to look at the evolution of Indian manufacturing, but we're doing it through the lens of one of its most dynamic sectors, the leather industry. I mean, think about it. From the bustling, traditional tannery floors of the mid-20th century all the way to the high-tech, highly complex global supply chains of today, this is an absolutely fascinating story of entrepreneurship, resilience, and just incredible, relentless growth.
Okay, let's dive into this. Picture 1947. Back then, India was primarily just an exporter of raw hides and skins. That was the starting line, right? But flash forward to today, as we head toward 2027, and we are talking about a completely different universe. It's a highly sophisticated ecosystem pumping out finished footwear, high-end handbags, and garments from major global brands, all while integrating artificial intelligence and strict sustainability standards. The sheer distance this industry has traveled is just staggering.
To make sense of it all, we'll trace this 80-year hero's journey through 5 distinct phases: laying the foundations, going global and green, climbing the value chain, the pandemic stress test, and finally, we'll look ahead to the next 80 years.
So let's start right at the beginning. Phase 1, laying the foundations.
Right after independence, you had traditional, generations-old craftsmanship suddenly meeting modern science and national policy. In 1948, the Central Leather Research Institute, or CLRI, was established in Madras. This was a big deal because it made leather research a national priority, bringing new indigenous tech directly to the sector. Then, by 1964, India hosted its first international leather fair. This was a clear signal that leather was moving way beyond just a basic industrial material. It was becoming fashion. But the massive turning point, that happened in 1973, when the government completely banned the export of raw hides and skins. This essentially forced the industry's hand. Because, well, if you can't export the raw material, you better quickly learn how to make the finished shoe, right?
During this time, it was like a giant puzzle coming together. The basic ingredients of a booming industry began to combine perfectly. You had the raw material, the brand new technology from the CLRI, highly skilled people, and dedicated manufacturing hubs. Regional ecosystems, specifically in places like Kolkata's Changra area and the southern clusters in Tamil Nadu, they really laid down the critical groundwork that would support decades of future growth. Which brings us to Phase 2, going global and green. As we entered the 1980s and 90s, India rapidly expanded its global footprint. But, not without facing some major growing pains. In 1984, the Council for Leather Exports was set up to champion Indian goods abroad. But the real game changer was 1991, with India's economic liberalization. Literally overnight, doors opened. Indian factories were now interacting directly with international buyers. Thrown onto this truly global stage, they had to start competing relentlessly on 4 distinct fronts: price, quality, delivery, and technology. Modern machinery started pouring into factories, and international quality expectations went through the roof. But hang on a second. I want to slow down here because this number is shocking: 400. In 1996, the Supreme Court of India ordered the closure of around 400 tanneries in Tamil Nadu due to severe pollution and wastewater issues. It was an absolute environmental crisis for the entire sector. So, the crucial point is that this 1996 crisis was a harsh but entirely necessary lesson. With the help of the CLRI, the industry had to completely overhaul and implement real environmental solutions across the state's operating tanneries. They learned the hard way that environmental compliance isn't just some nice-to-have PR talking point. It's a mandatory requirement for global competitiveness. You simply cannot build a global leather industry without environmental responsibility. Full stop. All right, let's move into Phase 3, climbing the value chain. Shifting into the 2000s, India transformed from a basic supplier into a highly sophisticated global partner. The industry successfully leveled up from raw leather to processed leather and then boldly into finished footwear. And from there, factories steadily moved even further up the value chain. We're talking high-end handbags and SLGs, small leather goods like premium wallets and card holders, manufactured directly for the world's most demanding fashion brands. And this brilliantly illustrates just how much things changed. Today, the script is completely flipped. According to the CLRI, a staggering 80% of India's leather exports now consist of finished products. Think about that for a second. They turned an entire national industry completely upside down from where it originally started in 1947. But to actually support that massive 80% output, the fundamental rules of the global supply chain changed. buyers stopped looking for just cheap manufacturing capacity. They wanted true partners capable of digital design and strict social compliance. This meant Indian factories had to step up. They adopted data-driven ERP systems, built out professional merchandising teams, and mastered CAD software. Furthermore, ethical labor standards became totally mainstream, non-negotiable parts of global sourcing. It was the whole shebang. Now we have to talk about Phase 4, the pandemic stress test. Of course, no 80-year journey is without a severe trial. The compounding crises of COVID-19 between 2020 and 2022 absolutely tested the survival of the entire Indian manufacturing ecosystem. We saw sudden factory closures, immense uncertainty for the workforce, and a massive disruption in global retail demand as luxury markets basically just hit pause. Add to that severe delays in raw materials and chemicals, plus completely unpredictable freight costs. And, well, you had a perfect storm.
Actually, scratch that. It wasn't just a storm, it was a total paradigm shift. Out of that chaos came a profound change in how global brands view sourcing. Cost alone was no longer the determining factor. Supply chain resilience and agility became paramount. Buyers finally realized that the cheapest supplier isn't necessarily the best supplier. The best supplier is the one who can actually deliver when everything goes wrong.
Which leads us perfectly into our final chapter, Phase 5, the next 80 years.
The industry didn't just survive the stress test. The sheer scale of it today is massive. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that for the 2025 to 2026 fiscal year, official figures put India's leather and footwear exports at approximately $4.75 billion. And incredibly, the Tamil Nadu cluster alone accounts for nearly 37% of this sector's overall exports.
But they are absolutely not stopping there. Check this out. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal recently called on the industry to target at least $15 billion in exports by 2026. Hitting that number requires massive scale, market diversification, and a deep reliance on free trade agreements. It is effectively a mandate to triple the industry's footprint. No pressure, right?
So, how does an industry triple its exports in such a short window? Well, it requires mastering a completely new set of essential tools. We are reaching the real climax of this industrial narrative, where factories are now integrating artificial intelligence to transform everything, from forecasting to inventory management. Global customers demand end-to-end traceability. They want to know exactly where their leather came from. Sustainability is entirely non-negotiable now, and world-class product design is the ultimate competitive weapon. Ultimately, the narrative of India's leather story has fundamentally evolved. It has shifted from "Can India manufacture?" to "Can India manufacture better?" Next time you see an Indian leather handbag, a shoe, or a jacket, you aren't just looking at a piece of fashion. You are literally looking at 80 years of Indian industrial history. You're seeing the result of millions of workers, technologists, and entrepreneurs continuously adapting and elevating their craft. And that leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to chew on. For those of you working in sourcing, manufacturing, or the broader global supply chain, when you look back at this incredible journey from raw hides to AI-driven sustainable fashion, which pivotal moment do you think changed India's leather industry the most? Seriously, think about it, because understanding that past is the absolute key to unlocking the next 80 years. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.